forget, hit that like, everybody. We're about to have a big one today. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, it's going to be a big one, apparently. It's everything riding on Biden. Let's see. Let's do it. Come on, do it. Come on.
I know words and best words. Deliberately, willful, and with total premeditation.
Oh, it's going to be, everything's right on it. We should all get very nervous and sit on the edge of our seats. Also, if your pulse isn't up, maybe jog in place. Hold on. Screw it. Let's just jump straight in, damn it. Let's just go straight to, hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. If you'll notice, and I think that you have, and by the way, hello, chat room, and welcome, and hi, how you doing? Good to see you. It's nice to have you guys with us today, and I hope you guys enjoyed my my visit to Stephanie Miller's show early this morning. Good times. I think you'll notice, if I may. Oh, and sorry, one.
So
one
there is a proposed bill in the House, HR.
Shut up. 1 second. Let's see. Hold on. Excellent. I just remembered a family thing. Talk amongst yourselves. So there is a there's a propensity, if you'll notice. Let's see. 1 second. What's the must send message on. Whoops, is on couch. Okay, covered. Family business stuff. I think, chat room, you might notice, and don't forget, hit that like and join me in this. I think you might have noticed that there are almost on the regular. There are make or break moments for the Biden-Harris campaign, for Joe Biden himself, for Democrats, for democracy. There are make or break moments all the time. And the phrase make or break has a lot of heft to it. It seems, yes, it's a normal colloquialism that we all kind of maybe throw in occasionally, but when you jump up and down on it with both feet all the time, it tends to have a lot more weight, especially when it's only on one side of the aisle. If you'll notice, there are no make or break moments for Donald Trump. Certainly not in the political arena. There may be some, I would argue, in the case of his courthouse appearances. Occasionally there were, you hear a little bit of language about that, and it was mostly for his attorneys and whatever their argument was, but not him as a person, because he sat there farting the place up and didn't actually do anything. So I think we've got what you're seeing a lot in the hemming and the hawing and the wailing and the gnashing of teeth that you're seeing around Biden right now, and that you've seen consistently since the debate and even leading up to it, for around some corners, around his age and other stuff, is basically make or break syndrome that you have seen. It stacks after a while. Is the point I'm trying to make. After a while of hearing everything's a fucking make or break, at a certain point, it's like you feel made or broken, I guess. And most people, because unless everything's fine and we're past the election and Trump has been, sent off into fuck off land, until that moment, the tension. Oh, right? Okay. So the amount of make or break storylines about Biden since before his election have not stopped. I mean, we started in the middle of a pandemic. People forget, but, we have been going through every single spot along the way that, he's been dealing with all these things, playing whack-a-mole with the normal problems that come up during a presidency and righting the ship after, an enormous issue like the pandemic. And, and again, after, by the way, being vice president during a period when we were recovering from 2008. So there's not been a single moment where Biden's vice presidency and his presidency haven't had all the regular challenges of a presidency stacked on top of one ginormous pressure cooker problem, be it the 2008, be it the Gaza, Ukraine, and certainly the pandemic, right? And through it all, handled it with a plum and a stutter. Whereas Donald Trump has just bullshitted his way through it, lied his ass off at every turn, and the press has kind of learned to shrug that off. And this is the language shift I would like to see after today going forward. That the dealing with the Jeffrey Epstein dump of stuff should be a make or break moment for the Trump campaign. Having a VP that brings more people on board than it excludes, for example, should be a make or break decision for Donald Trump and for the Republicans. Answering questions, doing a press conference in front of an open press corps about Project 2025 and his plans for the future should be a make or break moment for the Trump campaign. And I heretofore insist that it shall be. And if press people, if you don't start using that phrase with Donald Trump in at least equal measure to how you're using it with Joe Biden, I'm going to be up your ass with a crowbar, tinkering. I'm going to be in there just expect me, okay? Scuba gear and a crowbar. I'm ready for this shit. Now, coming up in about 15 minutes is precisely what I'm talking about, which would be the make or break moment in a series of make or break moments, which will not make nor break Joe Biden. Will some bedwetters still decide they're bedwetting after? Yes. Will some bedwetters decide, okay, it's fine, never mind, I'll come down off of the chair now that someone's killed the spider in the bathtub. I'll get down off the top of the toilet and join the family at dinner. Yes. Will there be a split between a bunch of people? Will the people who are late to the debate storyline thing that have been tortured with how do I word my concerns after the entire storm has fucking passed? But for the media's insistence and the people around them that are insisting that this is an ongoing worry. The storm is gone. You still have assholes wearing raincoats and walking around with umbrellas after the storm has passed, the sun is out and all that shit. That's what we're seeing right now. Right? There's a bunch of that stuff. Oh, here it comes. Next up, it's very exciting. The feed has just clicked in. La-di-da. All right. So about 15 minutes. Now, if they go live and we can hear the people in the background, I will do such a thing. But in the meantime, chat room, why are Dems crumbling? Here's the thing. Because Donald Trump is a real threat. And they're worried. And they're under the impression that that people have that Democrats, particularly, let's see, excellent, nice. Thank you, Andrea. And I think we're up on Instagram. All's well. All our channels flying. We're firing on all cylinders today because it's going to be very exciting. Make or break, ladies and gentlemen. Now, one of the things I want to get across to people, and we referred to it for a good long while, and I think I need to revisit it, is Stoic optimism. The standard operating procedure of a human being is optimism. You would not eat a meal if you didn't think you were going to live long enough to digest it and shit it out. Yes? Why bother? You are optimistic. You clearly think You wouldn't leave the house in your car to drive to the store if you didn't think you were going to get there. You act on optimism all the time. People think they don't. People think they operate in a pessimistic space. They don't. They talk themselves into a pessimistic mind state, but they act on their optimism all the time. Yes, optimism. Greg Giles says, I'm optimistic, I shower. That is precisely it. You only brush your teeth or floss if you're optimistic. That is an act of optimism. That means I want to keep my teeth so I can chew food that will happen in the future. That is an act of optimism because there are no guarantees in life, right? You're not promised tomorrow. None of us are. So you every single day, you fucking bullshitter, you are optimistic. Every step you take across the room, you assume you're not going to slip on a banana peel and crash your head into the fucking cement and die there on the floor and people find you a bloated corpse later on. You're operating under the impression that you're going to make it across the room to the sink before you throw up. You're always, even people, I would argue, even people who do themselves in, which, for the record, you should not do. If you're sensitive enough to want to do yourself in, you're probably worthwhile in the world on a level that you don't even appreciate. People who would even come to the conclusion that they have no worth or that they're sad about that worth probably are more empathetic than they even know and would be great in a position where they helped other people. So even more reason for you to stick around. But I would say that even people who do themselves in are acting out of optimism. They think the pain will end. They think the sorrow will be over. They assume it will. What happens if when you croak, you wake up on the other side and they go, oh, you got to do it all over again. This is a game simulation we're all in that teaches us how to mature. You're actually just a 15-year-old on this side of the wall, and you have to go back in and live the same life over again if you do yourself in. You have to start from scratch, and you're like, fuck, and you don't, right? But you still do it out of optimism. The illusion of pessimism is the problem. It's the illusion of pessimism. Because a lot of people, if you asked them, they'll gripe the fuck out of you. If you ask them about all, how they feel about stuff, they are materially, if you stack their positive versus negative statements about their job, their relationship, their stuff or whatever, most of the time, even if they don't feel it, they will only stack their negatives. And therefore, the impression you would get and the impression they give themselves is that they are pessimistic about how things are going to turn out, which they absolutely are not. I don't give a fuck if you think the glass is half empty or the glass is half full if you're going to drink from it. Because when you drink from a half full glass or a half empty glass, the premise is there'll be another glass of whatever it is down the line. Yes, people are gaslighting themselves every day. And I'm here to tell you that it's bullshit. It's not a reality. Okay. Even people who are like, oh my, and this is me defending, by the way, the bedwetters. This is me. Understand that a bunch of them think, okay, if we just get rid of him, then we'll come in and something else will fix it. But this is bad and it scares me, and therefore just change it and it'll be better. Okay. That, in their freak out, is optimism about the unknown, which is an incredible thing if you really think about it. They're just like, I don't know what the problem, the issue in front of me scares me so much, I'd rather cast things off into the darkness and hope it works itself out. Now, there are a myriad of philosophical problems around that, including something I have called the stroke of the pen fallacy, which is also tortured only Democratic presidents the entire time. Well, I guess some maggots get upset with Trump and his ilk, but most of the time they let it slide. Democrats tend to be more tortured by this. It's like they could fix it with a stroke of a pen, which they cannot. But that belief makes you think, well, since they could do it so easily, if they're not doing it, they must be stupid or evil. And if they're stupid, it's because they haven't heard me tell them how stupid they are. And if they're evil, they need to be replaced or killed or whatever. Right. So all the bedwetters out there, and especially the late to the party ones, I got to say, like, even they are operating out of some, there's going to be a white knight coming over the hillside, even if it's a black woman of color, or a woman of color in the VP slot who will fill in and do that, or if it's another, even whatever that white knight might be. They still believe that. Again, it's still optimism, even in their argument of pessimism. Just telling you. So with that in mind, I want everybody's pulse to get up and get all nervous. And, oh, God, what if they ask him a tough question? And what if he considers the question and is looking down while someone like Peter Doocy is asking some bullshit question, and they get new footage of him listening to the question while putting his head on his book so he doesn't go, you know what? I'd like to answer this like a president, but as an Irishman, fuck you, which is what that means, by the way. And there will be a couple of times where he gets senatorial, I have no doubt, where he goes, look, we've done this and this, and at any rate, I don't need to get into that. What we need to get into is this. Obama did that a bunch. He just didn't have a direct tell when he did it. Trump just diverts to lies. He just says we had the greatest economy ever and the border's wide open or whatever. And that isn't seen as a tick, that's seen as a campaign talking point. So people's decision, and one of the tweets I saw, one of the shits, whatever, that I saw before coming on today, how much time we got? We got about 5 minutes. That I saw on Twitter was people saying that there's about to be, the floodgates are about to open. And a torrent of Democratic lawmakers are going to call for Biden to step down, and it's only a matter of time. And they've already decided to do it before this press conference, which is, if they've been calling for it and they've already made up their mind, then fuck them. But also, these are the bedwetters and the also-rans. They've always been against Biden in this situation, and they think that other people will be more malleable to their ideas. So they, and they want to appear, more open and more accepting of whatever. Yeah. And 5 so far is exactly the point too. When they say torrent and the dam is about to break, there are hundreds of elected Democratic lawmakers in the House. There are a few dozen in the Senate. In the Senate so far, there has been one that has called for Biden to step aside, and there'll be somewhere in the order of 8 or 12 somebody nobodies in purplish districts, by the way, who want to get on record as saying he should have stepped down or whatever, because they need Republican votes as well to get across the line and whatever. And you know what? Fine. I guarantee the Biden administration is like, yeah, fucking shit on me all you want to. You got to get elected. Why wouldn't they? I hire a president for his judgment, not because I need a motivational speaker. And that's why the presidents that I have liked the most in my life, especially even post-presidency, have been the ones that weren't necessarily, think Jimmy Carter, wasn't the greatest public speaker. But I think in retrospect, besides the fact that, Reagan undermined him on purpose and, and literally engaged with an enemy to kneecap the president of the United States. So fuck him. But during and after a steady judgment and a good set of morals at the helm of the country. And since then has shown himself to be an extraordinary person and a great example of what a true Christian is, right? Jimmy Carter. Not, though, the person who gave speeches that got people on their feet applauding. Because I'm not hiring a motivational speaker. Leadership is great if you're in fucking The Walking Dead and the next community over has stole all your food, and you've got 2 bolts left, and they've got hammers and machine guns. You're probably going to need a rousing speaker to get you to get up off your ass and go get your tomatoes back. Fine. But in a civil society, you need someone with an understanding of the complexity of the issues who will make moral judgments about stuff, not somebody who will go, come on, guys, do what's best for women, finally. You know, we shouldn't even need that. So, I'm as curious as to how this will go. I have no weight on it the way other people do, though. I'm not looking for a president to make my heart swell, never have. I mean, it's nice when it happens, but it's not indicative of the decisions they've made. Look at the control point that Trump has over his own people. Look at how their hearts swell and they get all sweaty and wide-eyed looking at him, and look at the state of his decision-making and his his total comfort running around with fucking Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, Biden is not stepping down. People can go fuck themselves. And I'm looking for someone who's considerate in making these decisions, not somebody who is like a great public speaker, per se. Otherwise, I would have voted for a guy, I guess, to be vice president who had a stutter back then. Although there was, again, I'm not going to... What was the choice then? Sarah Palin? Get the fuck out of here. So... honest to God, I've seen the hand wringing, and none of it concerns me. Genuinely, and I'm sure there are people who believe that it's copium and blah blah blah. That's fine. They're absolutely allowed to believe that. That's how bedwetters see everything. But I am not worried that between now and the election, Biden's going to get worse and Trump's going to get better. It's not happening. The more people know about Project 2025, the more they hate it. The more they find out about Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and the depth of it, the more they reasonably freak out about it and think it's disgusting. And there is no situation where anybody who #Rovember, was livid about the denigration of women's rights and their ability to live freely in the United States of America is suddenly going to not vote for Biden, no matter how old he is, or is suddenly going to vote for Trump. It's dumb. That's not happening. Yeah. Trump told on Epstein? No, he didn't. It's not just that Biden is an issue. People don't get over vote because they're hard for Project 22. Yeah, no. Even the majority of Republicans aren't for the 2025 Project 2025 thing. Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, there's a shit ton of bot activity. Absolutely. So, hey, how are you doing? All right. Look at what's happening. And I'm still waiting. Let's see where it's. Hold on. Let me reload this page. Let me see if it pops back up. Hasn't started yet. Let me see if there's another room. I'm waiting on this Biden press conference because it's going to be fucking everywhere. Let's see. Yeah, Biden press conference today is like huge. Okay, this is the.
He was leaving. I interviewed
that's the count.
He was going to leave, and
That's the countdown to it.
Playbook newsletter.
There's a bunch of people talking about it before it happens. Here's CBS News.
Inherent contempt of
they still haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. This says, okay, it says live, but it's not up yet. Doesn't face concerns for going to. I don't know why Pacman and some of these others are referring to it as the big boy press conference. Pacman's calling it that in quotes, the same as one of the Fox channels. Is he referencing that? Holds new content summit. Nope. Daily report John Dickerson. They haven't come out yet. Hold on. Campaign officials meet. Blah blah blah. There's just a bunch of this like wailing and gnashing of teeth in their descriptives. I mean, granted, it's all clickbait. Here, I'll show you. This is the current thing. Live with this one, they're just showing pieces of him talking with the people from NATO that he's had discussions about. This is them, I guess, the high stakes solo press conference. This is clips from the NATO summit. This has not come on yet. News about Joe Biden. Joe Biden speaks at NATO summit. This is the other news about Joe Biden, White House. There we go. This is the next up. They're about to play this. Live breaking holds major big boy press conference. That's what Pacman's calling it. It's either referential to somebody else being a dick or being a dick himself. I'm not quite sure. Joe Biden news conference 70s. There we go. Big boy press conference. See, there's the Fox Dallas Fort Worth calling it that. So maybe he's referencing that. Here's somebody just with the "It's Over" storyline that's been around all over the place. Amid calls President told us watching live. NATO summit continues with all eyes on Biden. Is the press conference of the NATO summit. The daily report with John Dickerson on CBS. Biden take questions from press. Let's see if they popped in there. Nope. Soon. Let's see. Amid calls to drop out. That's the whole thing. So we're still waiting on this guy. Hold on. Let's see if we get in here. Still scoot forward, you crazy thing. Yeah, so we're still waiting. They'll be up in a second. That said, let's see, this is playing, so we'll let this play. And obviously, meantime, there's a bunch of other clips and stuff, but I have them kind of running in the background. So staff chat says what? Biden is, yes. Biden to speak tonight. Can Biden quietly watch live here at 7 p.m. Eastern time? So did they push it a half hour? Is that what it says? Oh, 7 p.m. Because this was originally 3:30. Maybe this is when they start the feed. All right. Well, then let's jump over to one thing real quick, if I may. Now, there are a few ways, chat room, where you can tell if and let me know when he's on, you guys, if they pop in there while we're doing this. There are a few ways you can know that that Biden's fine or that he's going to be all right. It's by how some people are reacting. The perpetually wrong, the people who even break the broken clock rule. When those folks start going, it's over, you pretty much know you're safe. Yeah. Special mod phone. Yeah. And one of those people would, of course, be this dude, the most miserable man on the internet, Greg Kelly, who manages, in the face of this says, by the way, Joe Biden will not be the presidential nominee for the Democrats. It's almost like they're rerunning some of their headlines from 2019, 2020.
So you may have heard the big news. Is it really big? If you're a Democrat.
Well, I guess it's not news per se. Well, we'll see. I don't even know what he's referring to quite yet.
Democrat, it's big. George Clooney, seen there last month with the president, Biden, and Obama, and what's her name again? Julia Roberts. They were very tight. Just last month, Clooney helped raise like $30 million for Joe Biden. The big news is today he says Biden should step down. He should not be the nominee.
Right. So let's recap for a second. For the record, the people who talk shit about George Clooney and say he's a baby-eating adrenochrome junkie, and part of the Hollywood elite that's trying to force transgenderism on kids in sports and all that kind of stuff. He's one of those, but now you should listen to him because he's saying what I like. That's not how it works. I don't like what I like because somebody else tells me they like it. I do because of the merits of what I'm liking. And in the case of this group, especially, we see a shit ton of this where they're like, oh, and now we say, I mean, they're doing it with the New York Times. Same thing.
Now, for a moment, though, really, let's think about this. George Clooney, what movie has he been in the past 20 years? I have no idea. I remember he was in that.
In the 20 years, he's done quite a few. I mean, but what are you going to go back to? I mean, he's done Coen Brothers movie. That was a lot of fun. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? He's gotten kind of in a quirky mode with some of the things. I liked, was it The American? Mainly because of its kind of patience and it's sort of like close to the vest spy work narrative where they don't really, there's not a lot of like loud shooting and running around. It's a little closer to reality.
The hospital soap opera show like 30 years ago. He's primarily known now for being married to Amal and that silly lake he likes to go to in Italy. Anyway, it is kind of a big deal if you're a Democrat that this guy came out in the New York Times and
right. Okay. By the way, if yes, and the Ocean Saga, absolutely, he's been in those. I mean, I would argue that he put those together and was kind of like the Sinatra of those movies, in that in many ways it was Damon and Brad Pitt who were really the charming fun part of that. Like they were the main heavy hitters in it, but that's neither here nor there. If you're going to make the case that we should all take what that guy says seriously, don't undercut and shit on him right away. You know what I mean? You should play up why we should listen and why we should respect what he's saying, shouldn't you? Doesn't that make sense? Right? Well, this guy, I mean, he's, say what you will about his movie career, but he's done this, and this, right? That's the silly lake stuff. Again, maybe that's just a way of diverting attention away from the fact that, Donald Trump flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane and got more phone calls between him and Jeffrey Epstein than we knew previously 2-3 weeks ago. Maybe that's why he's, downplaying rich people go to lakes and they hang out on islands and they make phone calls to other rich people. It's just what they do. Maybe that's it.
Said Joe Biden needs to go. I love you, but we need a new nominee. They're playing all cool about this right now. Joe Biden.
Are they? They're playing all cool? What do you mean? No one's returning your phone calls? Oh, okay. What do you mean they're playing all cool? You don't watch the other networks. What are you talking about? You're just not paying attention. Also, the weird part is Trump also jumped on Clooney right away as well, which I don't understand. If you're trying to this guy, he loves Biden, but hey, you can't argue with the fact that you use the ammo that they leave on the ground. You don't shoot yourself in the foot first, I guess. It's so odd.
And his people, this is a big deal.
Yes, it's once you've lost George Clooney, there's really no coming back, especially when you already lost George Clooney because Amal is pissed about the ICC stuff and Biden, even though he held back the 2,000-pound bombs from Israel, just supporting Israel in general or something, that was enough to piss her off and whatever. That's what this is about.
And remember when they told us we were imagining it, that Joe Biden might have had problems at George Clooney's fundraiser because that's when Obama had to lead him out of the room, remember?
Because they wanted to leave and get a picture with George Clooney because George Clooney was leaving. We're still out on stage, and Obama's like, it's a fundraiser. You got to get a picture with these folks because they share it out, and they go, hey, I'm George Clooney. Here's me standing next to the president. You should send money. That's why they were there.
And look how Obama tries to play it off all cool. He's talking to him. Joe is totally oblivious and has that weird stiff walk.
Yeah, I don't care that his walk is stiff. Explain to me Trump's floppy right foot, dum-dum.
They actually call this a cheap fake, that somehow conservative media manipulated it all. Anyway, this is
No, they didn't. That's not the cheap fake they were referencing. Pay fucking attention.
Fascinating time.
Yes, Biden, by the way, yes, Biden needs back surgery, and he's not going to have it until after the election. That was the idea, is that he can't have it until they've been dealing with it for like a year, and because of Gaza and all that kind of shit, they decided to not do it, and because there's so much going on or whatever, and there's going to be a huge story about, he has to be under for it, and Kamala will be president for 6 hours and all that shit. And so rather than do that during the election, they're going to wait until after, because it's elective surgery, because he can walk. It's just stiff. And he's going to do it in, probably Christmas this year.
Right now, I'm hearing people like Chuck Schumer are open to Joe leaving.
Are you? Are you hearing it? Where are you hearing it, Greg?
Nancy Pelosi. And they're asking him. Some behind the scenes are asking Joe to leave. Pretty soon, they're going to tell him to leave.
No, they're not. Also, look, let me tell you a little something about a site called Adobe Express or Canva. That one of the things you can affect is the lines between the text, so that you can fit bigger sentences into a oddly shaped space in a greater picture. And so you don't have to have the corner of the U over here touching his shoulder, which looks like shit, because you just didn't bother. Now, I'll tell you why it looks like that. It's because the people you have working for you, Greg, don't give a fuck. Sometimes I have to deal with tech issues and graphics on my show simply because that's all I got to work with. You have allegedly an entire team there at the garage in San Diego, wherever Newsmax is made. And they are, Greg, they're phoning it in. They don't care. And yes, welcome, trolls. Thank you for being here. Hit the like, share the show, all that stuff.
He won't have a choice. Now, I keep hearing, well, Joe has all the delegates. I mean, if he doesn't want to go, he won't go. I think they're going to convince him. Yep, there are ways to get him to leave. Who remembers that guy who wrote the report about all the classified stuff in his garage? His name was H-U-R.
The evidence and the president himself put his memory squarely at issue. We interviewed the president and asked him about his recorded statement. Quote, "I just found all the classified stuff downstairs," end quote. He told us that he didn't remember saying that to his ghostwriter. He also said he didn't remember finding any classified.
Dude, it was like 7 years ago. I'm dead serious. He doesn't remember saying those exact words to his ghostwriter. And his ghostwriter, by the way, writing it down, or I suppose recording it. I'm not quite sure. Run that back again. Let's just, shall we? Hold on.
And the president himself put his memory squarely at issue. We interviewed the president and asked him about his recorded statement. Quote, "I just found all the classified stuff downstairs," end quote. He told us that he didn't remember saying that to his ghostwriter.
Right. Why would that be weird? I'm dead serious. Why would that be weird? I don't remember saying that to him. It's not in the book, I don't suppose. Again, working with his ghostwriter, what have you. Yeah.
He also said he didn't remember finding any classified material in his home after his vice presidency. And he didn't remember anything about how classified documents about Afghanistan made their way into his garage.
That's right, because he didn't actually take it there. Unlike Donald Trump.
So he spent 2 days with Joe Biden in a conference room, recorded the whole thing, and he knows that Joe Biden was lying. He's the one who said...
No. You don't get to use both talking points at the same time, fuckwad. He's making the case that Biden can't remember. You're selling... Stick to one sales point. You're making the case that Biden is old and doddering, not master criminal. You can't sell both at the same time. Master criminal pretends to forget. Actual doddering old man does forget. So you got to pick one. You got to decide whether he's actually forgetting and therefore can't be trusted because he has no memory, or he's a criminal who is hiding the fact that he knows by saying, "Well, I don't recall." And so you got to pick one side of that. You can't just choose both and ride both sides of the line. It doesn't work that way.
At court would present himself as an old man, nice old man with a bad memory, so that's why we're not going to prosecute. And he knows that that audio tape will be devastating for Joe. When he says things like this, random non sequiturs, it's a little bit hard to read, but...
He called on me to, how they do in law school, discuss a case, in the first torts case. And I had never read the case, and I stood up and spoke for 10 minutes. The whole class stood up and started clapping. Laughter. So the room laughed. The other people laughed. They were laughing about something. This isn't hard to understand. This is him telling an anecdote about bullshitting.
In this section, he said...
Oh, Joe's live? Shall we go to it? Hold on, Pink. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. Hold on. Let's go here. Begin shortly. He is live? Hold on. Come on. Maybe. Come on. Not quite. Not quite. Is this him walking out? Has he walked out yet? Is it just a couple minutes behind? Not leaving anywhere? Okay. All right. Yes. Thank you, Patreon folks. Hang in there. This isn't weird at all, but I want to hear Greg's description.
He's talking about something that happened in law school. President Biden, he called on me, how they do in law school, discuss a case, in your first torts class, and I had never read the case, and I stood up and I spoke for 10 minutes. The whole class stood up, started clapping. That didn't happen, by the way.
What do you mean it didn't happen? Fuck are you talking about? Hold on. Beyond prove a negative, prove to me that didn't happen. What is your evidence that didn't happen? That happened, likely before Greg Kelly was born.
They were...
You know what it did? Whenever it happened before Greg Kelly's father got his sexual assault charges kicked off the docket. How about that? And by the way, one of the reasons why this upsets Greg so much is because no one ever applauds Greg. It has never happened. Except maybe, I suppose, there's when he got fired someplace and they were clapping as he left. He left his morning TV job or whatever. Yeah.
Made to shut the plant down every whatever, about 8 months or 6 months or a year. Hey, by the way, they're asking him about classified documents in the garage. And
then read the question right before it, dumbass. Read the question right before it. What are they asking him about? Because he didn't just ask him about classified documents in the fucking garage. He asked him about his dead fucking son like an asshole. He asked him about his relationships. He was literally testing his memory on stuff. Specifically, this was Her's attempt to establish that if he says he doesn't remember, he's lying. That was the point. And Her's response was not that Biden's going to come in there and he's going to be a doddering old fool and forget, and it's that he's going to pretend to be a doddering old fool who forgets. He's going to put his memory at issue and use that as his defense. And Her's making the point by whatever they're talking about in his past when he went to school, his relationships, all that shit, that Biden's memory is fine. And the problem with that and why it didn't fucking work is because Her's entire questions were about kind of like generalized memories from when you're a kid, and your own like certain things pop up because you've related the story before, or it's an important part of your past, or you like that story or something that happened to you, right? That you're just like, this was hilarious. And you tell that story, but if somebody asked you what you did on noon, June 3rd of 1975, you're going to I don't fucking know. And they're going to go, aha, he's clearly lying because he remembers he graduated that year and he told a graduation story, but I'm supposed to believe he doesn't know exactly what he was doing on June 3rd or January 3rd of 1975 at 9 a.m. Right. Aha. Right. It's just stupid.
He's telling weirdo stories from 50 years ago.
Because they're asking him about his time in school, and they're asking him about his time in the Senate, and because this is how prosecutors will often gauge how forthcoming someone will be. Go here. I'll tell you what, Greg. Do yourself a favor. You want to see somebody bullshit their way through something and actually not know shit, and actually like clearly be lying about stuff they have read just yesterday, and lying about and just forgetting shit they should know that should be with them their entire fucking lives. Go watch Trump's depositions. Greg Kelly, go watch Trump's depositions. Yeah, I've watched, I think, all of them, unless there's one out there that I've missed, which is entirely possible because he's done a shit ton of them. But in all of them, he is so obviously shitting the bed. Apparently, it doesn't start for another 8 minutes. We'll get to the presser in a second. They apparently is 7. Yeah. So yes, Greg Kelly rant number 456. And I would like to also remind everybody that there is one intern putting these graphics up for Greg, and there are 0 producers prepping his show. And he's, for all of his real news bravado, the setup he has to do his show is equal to or smaller than mine. And I do mine in my office in front of a roll-up green screen. So, fuck you, Greg.
What does he say here? Whatever it is. And the guy was wearing the wrong pants, wrong jeans, and a spark caught fire and he got caught in the containment vessel, and he lost part of his penis and one of his testicles, and he was 23 years old. This has nothing to do with the classified stuff in his garage.
Right, so show the question right before it. Secondly, it sounds like they're talking about a case where you have to wear the proper garments when you're working in a work environment where people can get, where fire is an issue. It's a law case where somebody, where they didn't have the, proper OSHA stuff and the guy was injured. That's clearly what he's talking about. Right.
This is a way to evade responsibility, run out the clock, delay.
What clock, motherfucker? He sat for 2 days.
Tactic, whatever, or just dementia. Could be. If we hear that on audio.
Greg, I'll give you dementia, man, if you just roll back the questions previous to that so you can see where the conversation went. I'm not going to, because here's the thing. If I take any of this, and I take a clip about you talking about George Clooney and how George Clooney hasn't made a movie since he was on a TV show 30 years ago, some soap opera about a hospital, right? That if I take that clip of you and I play it and I go, we're talking about the Biden-Trump debate where allegedly Biden did poorly. Do you see how this works? If I don't show your lead in or anything afterwards, now granted, it's different with Greg Kelly because even in that case, it doesn't make any fucking sense. But if I took that little sliver of stuff, yes, it was ER, very well, well done. But if you take that sliver of shit where he's just rambling about George Clooney, and I go, this is supposedly about them replacing Biden, and he's rambling about whether or not George Clooney has a movie career, and I go, I think Greg Kelly has damage to his prefrontal cortex. I think he's got brain perforations, might be a worm, probably caught it from making out with RFK Jr. Until I see otherwise, we'll just assume that's what it is.
It could be yet another game changer.
Could be yet another game changer. So if there's a game changer, then the game would change back. God damn it, these people are so stupid. They're just so stupid.
Lynn refuses to hand it over, okay?
Okay. Also, by the way, the president, I guess, has full immunity to go fuck yourself. I would just, if I heard a drone overhead, I would get nervous, Greg, apparently, because if Trump was as amoral as he was in office, why wouldn't you just assume that Biden, the criminal, dundering old man, would accidentally call for an airstrike on the city bus Greg Kelly was getting home in? Get the fuck out of here.
Republicans want it. They want it bad. Pretty soon, I think the Democrats are going to release it.
Release it or really sit?
Pretty soon, I think the Democrats are going to release it.
Really sit. They're actually going to sit. Release it? What? Are you smelling almonds, Greg?
But the Republicans got the ball rolling.
I heard really sit as well. I did. Did everybody? Am I? All right. I can't. I'm not the only person who heard really sit, right? That's so fucking weird. Yeah. You got me. All right.
How can you claim privilege for the audio of the transcript you just testified was the same? I'm talking.
Because there's other stuff said that's not in the transcript, because they kept recording in case they picked stuff up, and there was a lawyer present, and they talked to his counsel, and some of it was picked up on tape but left out of the transcript. That's how.
Specifically about that particularized rationale, and you don't want to discuss it, which is why you're non-responsive, and that's what.
Oh, by the way, you know why they're mad. You know why they're mad, right? Because their constituents don't like to read, right? Hey, look. You want to release some fucking actual recordings? How about the videos of of Epstein's depositions, for example, in the grand jury stuff? How about all of those? Where are those? Oh, they went missing under bar, I think. Oi. Are we up? Okay, gotcha.
Why we need the audio. White House official would
You need the audio. I need the audio. My constituents can't read.
Voluntarily cooperate in a criminal investigation only if the Justice Department promises not to release the audio recordings? That doesn't make any sense.
It's interesting what's going to happen. You can see this could get Joe Biden out if they release that tape or threaten to release it.
No, it wouldn't. You don't think we've seen him like tell anecdotal stories? What do you think the audio tapes are going to do? That there'll be pauses between his answers and shit because he's thinking? They're not videotaped, you dumb motherfucker.
I think Joe will go away.
Okay, keep thinking that, stupid.
He'll say, you know what? You're right. I do have a little bit long in the tooth. Time for some fresh blood. This is how it could go down.
Yeah, that's how it could go down. By the way, have you read the Epstein dumps, the recent stuff that's come out of Florida that was released by Ron DeSantis? Not by the way, lawfare from Biden's DOJ, but by a law passed in Florida that released all those documents that was signed by Ron DeSantis. Have you read that stuff, Greg? It's great reading. If you want to call for the videotape depositions of stuff, and obviously you'd have to redact the faces because a lot of the underage girls who were being interviewed in these situations were, they fear for their lives still to this day. But tell me about Doe 174. I think that would be the thing. Tell me about Doe 174.
And if that's not enough, there's plenty of other things they can look at. Next.
Yeah, go for it.
Next.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lies!
Wow, weird.
Why? Why is that weird? What's he supposed to do? Like yuck it up or something? How about this? Show me a video of Trump doing the whole like pursed lip waddle that he does. Why is the double hand job thing not weird? Whatever.
They can start looking at his family and tell Joe, we're looking at your family.
Yeah, this was fucking Stu Burger from the Blaze did the same kind of shit. Here's how we could get rid of them. It's not fucking happening.
Again.
Yes, we'll look at them again. If you don't step down, we will release pictures of your son smoking a cigarette in the bathtub. Oh, dear God. Oh, no. We're going to tell people that your son did crack. Oh, no.
For real this time. After all.
For real? What are you saying? Comer's been bullshitting this entire time? What do you mean for real?
Joe Biden, President Biden, why did your brother really write you a check for $200,000?
To pay back the money he borrowed from the family trust? What do you think, he's going to answer the question differently now that people think he can't remember anything? Now he can just, hey, fuckhead. He could literally just go, I don't remember. I got busy. I'm doing busy shit. That's something. He borrowed some money or something. I don't know. I wasn't even looking. I'm busy being president. P.S. I'm immune to everything. So eat shit.
Who does that? What's that all about?
What's it all about? Loanage. He borrowed from the family trust and he paid it back. We don't care. No one cares. Nobody cares. And nobody launders money with a check they write in their own handwriting on the fucking kitchen counter.
Was it really a loan repayment?
Yes, it was.
Or was it a payoff for the work that James Biden did for a company called AmeriCorps and you got your cut?
AmeriCorps is an American company. Even if it was, and by the way, it wasn't, because they gave him a loan. That's where the money came from. AmeriCorps loaned him the money to pay back Joe, because he'd been borrowing money. He just used that to pay back Joe first.
As we believe has been the arrangement all along. Why?
What arrangement? AmeriCorps doesn't fucking exist anymore. They didn't get any influence. What influence did they pay for? Yeah, $200K is awful. $2 billion to fucking Jared.
Why did you get a $40,000 check? I mean, really? From your sister-in-law?
What's the date? It's September 13th of I don't give a fuck. He's not vice president anymore, and he's not running for president yet. I don't care. The most offensive thing about this is that you assholes think he's that cheap a date, that he would sell out the country for $240,000, or that the big guy gets the smallest slice of whatever this criminal enterprise you thought was going on is. It's fucking dumb. It's 2017, you dumb motherfucker. September of 2017. He's not running for president yet, and he's no longer vice president.
Who does that? Another
people who borrow money.
Loan the poorest man in Congress. Why did you
the fucking lip smacking.
Co-sign a truck? You bought a truck and you made a big deal about posing for it. This is a very suspicious picture. We went through this.
Why? What's suspicious? Is that even really a truck? It looks like a station wagon to me. I think they just jacked the tires up. That's an El Camino. It's just a fat El Camino.
This truck may have been purchased with money from China.
All right, this is good. I wasn't. The idea of Biden as a master criminal and they're posing in front of a truck at the dealership to hide money laundering of China money. What? Why didn't... I don't know. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, Biden's live. Is he live? Is he up now? Yeah. Let's see. Get in here. What are you doing? It says begin shortly still. All right. Let me know when he's actually up.
These people, I believe, are dirty.
What? Who? It's a fucking... This guy posted it. Like, how? What kind of ham-handed criminal enterprise is this? Oh, God.
And we know it, and the Democrats, they've got to know it.
Yes, it's one of those underground ways. It's one of the most obvious ways of money laundering, buying vehicles at the dealership and driving them. As I guess your drug addicted son gets back on his feet. What?
They could start, say, Joe, I'm sorry, but maybe.
I'm sorry, we need to see the truck. What truck? You know, the truck. I can't let you because if you open up the hood, it's full of stock certificates for AmeriCorps.
It's the right thing to do because your life could get really complicated.
Really? More complicated than being president during the Gaza and the Ukraine war? More complicated than having a son who was crack addicted who worked for a company in the country that's currently at war with Russia? More complicated than running against a child molester? Really? Really? Complicated?
They could ask questions like, well, the Daily Mail already asked, why did you refinance your home in Wilmington, Delaware 20 times? 20 times in like 25 years? Who the hell does that?
Somebody who's running campaigns and borrows money for their campaigns to extend that, or does keeps the money from the house in the house. You borrow money on it and then you fix it up from that money inside it. And by the way, why would you have to refinance it 20 times if you've got a bunch of China money coming in?
And the house you had before that, you refinanced that 15 times. You were there for about 20 years. Who does that?
People who expand the size of a very large house and who are, again, loaning money to their campaign.
This is crazy stuff.
Why is it crazy?
And how did you get all this stuff on a government salary?
Well, first of all, he got the son by fucking his dead wife when she was still alive and she gave birth to him, and then he grew up. So this right here. The suit, I'm guessing he bought probably off the rack. I mean, I don't know how many tuxedos he's got. I'm going to guess 2. The Corvette he's the original owner. He's had it since it only cost $6,000. Yeah. And the houses he bought cheap because they were decrepit, fixed them up, lived in them for a long time, and then the second house they bought with the proceeds from a book that he wrote about his presidency, his vice presidency.
Right? You moved into that palace right after you left government service.
Right, based on book sales and money he made giving speeches. It's in his taxes. It's well within his means. Here's the real question. Who controls the loan on Trump Tower? Where did the money from Deutsche Bank come from? Why did the Chinese bail out Jared while he was working for Trump in the White House? Right? How did $17 million end up in a Chinese bank account that Donald Trump had that had never had more than $700,000 in it up until he became president, and he removed $15 million of it during his presidency in 2017, and then right after he did that, he shut down right before he did that, he shut down TPP, and then that money shows up in the account.
And remember how he would say all the time, I have no money.
I was enlisted for all the years I was a senator as the poorest man in the United States Congress.
I had the dubious.
Yes, that's true. He only got money after he was vice president and wrote a book. It's in his taxes.
Distinction of being listed as the poorest man in Congress for 36 years.
I had the great pleasure of being listed as the poorest man in Congress for 36 years.
Right. And by the way, what he meant is the Senate is really what he was. He was the poorest man in the Senate. And that's because there are people like Rick Scott, who's like worth, whatever, $150 million. A lot of senators are multi-millionaires. Joe is live? Hold on. Biden isn't on yet? Okay, hold on. Let's see if this is... because he's not supposed to be. I guess it's going at 7, or they're running a little late. Hold on. They'll begin shortly. He's making everybody wait. Okay, that's fine.
This is, I think it's called venality. This is where you telegraph to folks.
Venal is Joe's middle name.
You want money. You are susceptible to bribery. You're basically inviting bribes.
By what? Talking about the fact that you used to be poor and you're not anymore?
It's a theory.
It's a dumb one. All right. Is this so? The reason you don't talk about what a broke motherfucker you are, Greg, is because you don't want people to think you're susceptible to bribes.
I do know this. If they can,
is that why you bitch about riding the bus to work, Greg? Is you just begging someone to bribe you?
Get Donald Trump on nothing and indict him 4 times up and down the East Coast, New York, Washington, Florida. They can get Joe on all of this other stuff. I mean,
no
real stuff. 200 grand from his brother.
200 grand from his brother. What's that when you stack it up to paying almost that amount to a porn star you're, as far as we know, not related to, who you told one of your buddies at the golf course looked like your daughter, and you told her she looked like your daughter? Barf, barf.
Government salary. And weird statements like this also indicate that Joe had his hand out from the very beginning. This is from the mid-1970s. Joe complaining about how he doesn't have that much money. I am not a rich man, and my family does not have money. If I sold everything I own, including my house and cars, I could probably scratch up $200,000, which wasn't bad in the mid-1970s. But that's nothing compared to most of the guys in the Senate.
Right. It isn't.
You see, he thinks he's entitled to this stuff.
No, he doesn't. He's pointing out the difference between him, who he took the fucking train back home to be with his kids every fucking night. And the other guys just didn't. They were like, talk about these dudes from like Montana and Wyoming, these guys who have 500,000 people in their fucking state, and yet they're all multimillionaires.
Last September, when the Senate was debating a pay raise for itself, he said, I don't know about the rest of you, but I am worth a lot more than my salary of $42,500 a year in this body. It seems to me that we should flat out tell the American people we are worth our salt. Again, back then, $42,500 was a great salary. This
not for the Senate, and not compared to everybody else.
This was offensive even back then. How did this guy keep getting reelected? The editor of a great big paper in New Hampshire noticed this. One of the greatest editorials ever written about Joe Biden. As a simple explanation of the country and its sad state, no more perfect illustration could be given than an Associated Press dispatch from Washington, D.C., in which Senator Joseph R. Biden, Democrat of Delaware, is quoted, I don't know about others, but I am worth a whole lot more than my salary of $42,500 a year in this body. Oh, this guy's fantastic. Can you imagine the conceit and stupidity of a young man of 30 who would say that, I don't know about others, but I am worth a lot more than my salary of $42,500 a year in this body?
How about every yuppie ever?
The voters of Delaware who elected this stupid, conceited jackass to the Senate should kick him in the rear to knock some sense into him, and kick themselves for voting for such an individual to represent them.
Apparently the people of Delaware disagreed and kept reelecting him because they believed he was worth more. Because his pay went up as the pay went up for the Senate, and he got a pay raise with everybody else over that time. So apparently the voters of Delaware agreed. They didn't go, we'll send him back and we want our senator, but we want a law put in place that freezes their income at $43,500 because we don't believe anybody, especially Joe Biden, is worth more than that in the Senate.
Again, always about money, the refinancing of the House. I'm the poorest guy. Yeah.
Here's the thing. If he was rich and getting all these bribes and all this money everywhere, then why would he have to refinance it at all? I think, if anything, the fact that he was refinancing his house all the time and trying to get a better rate or pulling some money out to do repairs or those kind of things constantly shows that he didn't have a big fucking bag of, Menendez money sitting in the fucking, or a Deutsche Bank, Russian oligarch connection to bail him out. You do realize that every description you're fucking making of this, it points to the fact that he's been on the up and up. Again, if you're making money on the side, you don't give a shit about your fucking salary. You're not going to care because you're getting paid in other ways. If you're not getting paid in other ways, like the other guys, you would go, fuck, I'm not making I'm barely making bills and I'm working my ass off in the Senate, right? Wouldn't you complain about your salary if that's all you got? If you had money, if you had gold bricks coming in and all kinds of stuff, you don't give a rat's ass. You'd work for free. Which, by the way, Rick Scott effectively is. Or like Donald Trump. Donald Trump's like, I don't even need my presidential salary. Why? Because he was willing to sell out the whole fucking country. He knew he's going to make a ton of money selling classified documents to our enemies. Selling out the country itself. Who gives a shit about 400,000 if you're going to have billion-dollar buildings, or your son-in-law and your daughter are going to get a $3 billion deal with the Saudis after? Who gives a fuck about $1.2 million in 4 years? Again, Donald Trump is taxpayers paid 350 plus years of presidential salary just traipsing the Secret Service and the rest of the government to all of Donald Trump's properties. And without that money, most of them would be in probate already. That's not a good thing. First of all, his properties are shit. As we now know, most of his golf courses are in the paths of airplanes. That's why he bought them on the fucking cheap. And he made the Secret Service, he charged them fucking like above retail to stay there. Good Lord.
And he's buying these incredible estates. I think.
Jesus Christ. Are you ejaculating, you tiny little man? They're not incredible estates. Especially the first one. It was a piece of shit. He fixed it up. That's why it was worth something. That's why he was able to sell it and use that money to buy a better place.
It's serious circumstantial evidence, and a lot more than circumstantial.
No, it isn't. It's not evidence. It's information, and it is not germane to fucking anything.
Of corruption. So if I...
How the fuck is buying a house, fixing it up, selling it for more than it's worth, and then selling a book, getting the proceeds from that, and being able to buy a lake house or something as vice president of the United States after you leave? How is that evidence of corruption and not just decent, run-of-the-mill investing over decades? Good Lord.
You know this. You know this.
Nobody knows this. You're a weirdo.
Democrats know this. The Department of Justice knows this. They all want him gone.
No, they don't. You're a weirdo.
I think he can be influenced.
Really? You think so? Then why hasn't he? You see what they've done to his son? And you think he can be influenced after all that shit? You think the Chinese were blackmailing him, or the Russians or the Ukrainians or somebody were blackmailing him with shit about his son, and it's all out there now, and he could have rolled early and stopped it, and he didn't?
And I've been right about this stuff a lot, by the way.
No, you haven't. You've never been right about anything, you weird, tired little bastard.
Early on in Joe's presidency, this is back in February of 2021, I saw him take a little trip, just a little trip, and it made me nervous. And
you're always nervous, Greg. You're a nervous little boy. When are you not nervous? Look at your face.
I gave him this advice. I really was worried about his safety.
Yeah.
This is what I said. When you're the man, everybody's looking and watching. And I've noticed something about you, and actually from the heart, sir, this is sincere, it concerns me. You're taking those stairs a little bit too fast. This whole running thing, this whole trying to convince everybody that you're a man of vitality. I've seen you run down ramps, run on stage, run off stage. It's going to catch up with you, and we're starting to see it. Take it easy, okay? Fair enough? Fair enough. He's 78, okay? Shouldn't be running. My advice to President Biden, please, Mr. President, walk, don't run, and maybe also don't ride, okay? I was a lot slimmer back then.
You mean back then? It's like 2 years ago.
4 years ago, 3 years ago. What happened 38 days later? Joe took the worst fall going up Air Force One. I mean, and the guy is...
And he caught himself at 80.
Taken so many falls since. His family wouldn't tell him. His staff wouldn't tell him. I told him. But he didn't listen. Look at all these terrible falls and more. And more.
First of all, the bike, who cares? Secondly, he tripped on a sandbag here, which shouldn't have been on the stage. Whatever. And going up the stairs again, so what? So what? It's not because of a cognitive issue. It's because he got a shortened tendon on his foot because he broke his foot during the campaign in 2020.
And you know what? I'm right about this. Joe, you really should get out now. In some ways,
I'm sure he'll listen.
I want you to stay because I think you're definitely beatable, but it's bad for the country. You should be president for another 10 minutes. And I know you're not going to be the nominee. I made that prediction a year and a half ago. You know who else should quit now? The ultimate him. He's not
the ultimate him?
going to be the Democrat nominee, I can tell you that. I know for sure.
He is.
Or the Democrat nominee will not be Joe. And it is because of this file situation and a whole lot of other things.
This file situation?
Yeah. So I said he was going to fall and he fell. I said he's not going to be the nominee, and I think that's going to work. And now,
yeah, you think because they were going to broom him over classified documents as a way of hiding Trump's classified document stuff, and the Epstein files were about Trump, not about him. I don't think, chat room.
He could do it the easy way or the hard way. It looks like he wants to do it the hard way. There is some precedent for this. You know, I hear the family is dead set against Joe Biden resigning or giving up the nomination. But
that's precedent? Is that what precedent means?
But his family, I know he loves them and all, and everybody loves their family, but they're just...
No, not everybody. And Greg, I'm not convinced you even like your family or vice versa.
Just not impressive people. And they're wrong, and they make mistakes, and they get arrested, and they don't take responsibility for children in other states and the grandparents and all this stuff.
But at least, hey, the guy that's running for office does, and not in the case of Trump, of course, not so much.
Joe puts a little bit too much stock in his family.
Because being an Irish family, family was everything. My dad's expression was family's the beginning, the middle, and the end. And he meant it.
Yeah, that's just terrible. How did we even elect a man who believes that? You know, where's Melania? let Melania describe how family works. Also, you do realize that your guy buried his kid's mother on a golf course with no headstone. I want to thank Greg Kelly for cementing my belief in Biden.
Family is great, totally, yeah. But that doesn't mean your family is right, okay? And these people are the ones who are saying, Joe, you must stay in. But again, they don't really know all that much. They really made some very serious mistakes. So they're telling him to stay in, just like Richard Nixon's family told him to stay in. Now, Richard Nixon, I admired him tremendously.
So you believe he should have stayed in. So you're one of those people.
Posthumously, I still admire him, and a great family. And they did. They told him, don't resign, Daddy. Look at this. That's Julie hugging her father, Tricia and Ed Cox off to the left. And it's just a beautiful note that...
It is. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Even though he was caught committing crimes against the country, it's a beautiful note.
She wrote to her father.
Who does that? Who writes a note to their father when they're good? I mean, a $200,000 check, I understand, but who does that?
Just before, 2 days before he resigned. Dear Daddy,
and what kind of a father doesn't listen to his daughter?
Love you. Whatever.
It's just such a bunch of shit.
Whatever you do, I will support you. I am very proud of you. Please wait a week or even 10 days before you make this decision. Go through the fire just a little bit longer. You are so strong. I love you. Julie. Millions support you. Just a beautiful note.
It is a note that no one's ever even said a note like that to Greg, nor would they. Greg has always wanted a note like that when he was leaving daytime New York TV or dealing with sexual assault allegations against him while his dad was police commissioner, and nobody, including his father, sent him a note. Why can't I get a beautiful note like that?
And they loved each other.
Seriously, is Joe on? Okay, good. Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Let's go. Oh, bang. Come on. Oh, wait, hold on. Get in here. Where is it? There we go.
Thank you. Please be seated. Well, good evening. We just concluded this year's NATO summit, and the consensus among the members was it was a great success. It was especially momentous because it represented the 75th year of the most important military defense alliance in the world's history of the world. We should never forget that NATO grew out of the wreckage of World War II, the most destructive war in history. The idea was to create an alliance of free and democratic nations that would commit themselves to a compact of collective defense. Standing together, they knew we'd all be safer. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. And it's worked because a would-be aggressor knows if they attack one of us, they'll be attacked by all of us. Sending that message is the best way to deter aggression and prevent wars in the first place. For those who thought NATO's time had passed, they got a rude awakening.
I tried to
when
bring
Putin
the
invaded
volume up.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
Some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared back to life because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. But this time, no one cowered in appeasement, especially the United States. We collected intelligence that Russia was planning to invade Ukraine months before the invasion. I directed the intelligence community to be a significant amount of intelligence be declassified so I could start building an international coalition to oppose the invasion. Then in February, some of you remember, I warned the world that the invasion was imminent.
Yep.
I rallied a coalition of 50 nations from Europe to Asia to help Ukraine defend itself. Many foreign policy experts thought, as Putin amassed Russian forces just 100 miles north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, but Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia. The capital would fall in less than a week. But the Ukrainian people, backed by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands, and NATO stands stronger than it has ever been. During the week of this summit, several heads of states made it a point in their statements to thank the United States and to thank me personally for all that NATO has achieved. NATO is not only stronger, NATO is bigger because we led the charge to bring in Finland and Sweden into the alliance, and it makes a gigantic difference. Excuse me. Meanwhile, my predecessor has made it clear he has no commitment to NATO. He's made it clear that he would feel no obligation to honor Article 5. He's already told Putin, and I quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." In fact, the day after Putin invaded Ukraine, here's what he said. It was genius. It was wonderful. Some of you forgot that, but that's exactly what he said.
This is 2014. He said that.
But I made it clear, a strong NATO is essential to American security. And I believe the obligation of Article 5 is sacred. And I would remind all Americans, Article 5 is invoked only once in NATO's long history, and that was to defend America after 9/11. I made it clear that I will not bow down to Putin. I will not walk away from Ukraine. I will keep NATO strong. That's exactly what we did, and exactly what we'll continue to do. Now, the future of American policy is up to the American people. This is much more than a political question. It's more than that. It's a national security issue. Don't reduce this to the usual testament that people talk about, issues of being a political campaign. It's far too important. It's about the world we live in for decades to come. Every American must ask herself or himself, is the world safer with NATO? Are you safer? Is your family safer? I believe the American people know the answer to all those questions is yes. And I believe the American people understand that America is stronger because of our alliances. I believe the American consensus from Truman to Reagan to me still holds today. America cannot retreat from the world. We must lead the world. We're an indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright wrote. Now let me turn to three other key issues. Just this morning, we had a great economic report showing inflation is down.
Yep.
Overall prices fell last month. Core inflation is the lowest it's been in 3 years. Prices are falling for cars, appliances, and airfares. Grocery prices have fallen since the start of the year. We're going to keep working to take down corporate greed to bring those prices down further.
By the way, I know your heart beats up because you're watching this.
Trump's calling for a 10% tariff on everything Americans buy,
We're good.
including food from overseas, vegetables, and other necessities. And economists tell us that that would cost the average American working family another $2,500 a year. It's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, our efforts to secure the border, southern border, is working. After Trump killed the bipartisan effort to secure the border,
there we go.
Republicans and Democrats had worked on, because he thought it would benefit me and make him a loser, Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month. As a consequence, working with Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office.
Wow.
Third, for months, the United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, to bring the hostages home, to create a path for peace and stability in the Middle East. 6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council, the G7. That framework is now agreed on by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close, but we're making progress. The trend is positive, and I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now. Let me conclude where I began. We're the United States of America. We are the indispensable nation. Our leadership matters. Our partnerships matter. This moment matters. We must rise to meet it. With that, I'll take your questions. I've been given a list of people to call on here. Reuters, Jeff Mason.
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Harris.
So let's start there. Number one, the fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once,
they're going to jump
and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the Senate a long time. The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go in this campaign. And so I'm just going to keep moving, and because, look, I got more work to do. We've got more work to finish. There's so much, we made so much progress. Think about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world. Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million jobs. I mean, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. Their prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down, and so I'm optimistic about where things are going. Danny Kemp, AFP.
He's on son France press.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, and the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing by leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean, Putin, I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I know it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is well, anyway, I thought it was the most successful conference I've attended in a long time, and find me a world leader who didn't think it was. Next one, Nancy Cordes, CBS.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned other instances in history where presidents have faced a challenge, but what makes this moment in history so unique is that it is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision to stay in the race. It's your friends, supporters, people who think you've done a great job over the past 4 years. Have you spent time thinking about what it would mean for your legacy, which you've worked decades to build, if you stay in the race, despite the concerns that voters say they have, and you lose to someone who you yourself have argued is unfit to return to the Oval Office?
It's the Stephanopoulos thing.
I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started.
Here you go.
As you recall, understandably, many of you and many economists thought my initial initiatives that I put forward, can't do that, it's going to cause inflation, things are going to skyrocket, the debt's going to go up. What are you hearing now from mainstream economists? 16 economic Nobel laureates said I've done a hell of a job. That under my plan so far and what's going to happen, in the future, if I'm reelected, that things are going to get much better. Our economy is growing. I was determined when I got elected to stop the trickle-down economic theory, that if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people and working-class people need help. And so what happened is I decided to was able to implement as president what I believed when I was a senator. And that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy. And the wealthy still do very well. They do fine. And guess what? Find me a mainstream economist who said we haven't done well. What have we not done that isn't working right now? And so we got more to do, though. We got to finish the job. And by the way, I come from the corporate state of the world. Delaware has more corporations registered in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined. I'm not anti-corporate, but corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. Doubled. It's time things get back in order a little bit. It's time, for example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase of corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes are limited to 5%. We're going to make a lot of changes that I've been talking about because we're going to continue to grow this economy. And by the way, remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union. Well, guess what? I've been the most pro-union labor president in history. Not a joke. And guess what? We had the Treasury Department do a study. When unions do better, everybody does better.
There we go.
Everybody does better. And we talk about how, for example, remember when we talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States? Used to be 40% of the industry. We invented the chip. 40% of the industry was in the United States. And former presidents decided that the best way to do it is find the cheapest labor in the world, send the product over there and import what the product was. And so what did I do? I was told not to go over to to Asia, including Europe, but Asia. And I remember going to South Korea, convincing them to invest $20 billion in the United States to build computer chip factories. And I asked why when they finally decided to do it. And the answer was because you have the safest economy in the world and you have the best workers in the world. So the whole idea here is we've invested, there's over $50 billion in investment in computer chip manufacturing just coming in the bean. None of you thought that would happen.
Right.
None of you thought that would happen.
That's right.
But it's happening.
I'm glad he's taking them to task about it.
And it's going to grow economies. All three. And by the way, red states and blue states. Matter of fact, there's as much in red states as in blue states. I've made no distinction. So my generic point is that the idea that we can't continue to build and grow the economy, make it fairer. And like I said, from my standpoint, when the middle class does well, that's when the whole economy grows. The poor have a shot, the wealthy do well, but the wealthy got to start paying their taxes.
As a follow-up, sir, you mentioned that your Vice President Kamala Harris would be ready to serve on day one. Can you elaborate on that? What is it about her attributes and her accomplishments over the last 4 years that make her ready to serve on day one if necessary?
First of all, the way she's handled the issue of freedom of women's bodies to have control over their bodies. Secondly, her ability to handle almost any issue on the board. This was a hell of a prosecutor. She was a first-rate person, and in the Senate, she was really good. I wouldn't have picked her unless I thought she was qualified to be president. From the very beginning, I made no bones about that. She is qualified to be president. That's why I picked her. Felicia Schwartz, Financial Times.
Thank you, Mr. President. The presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
The limits I've acknowledged I have?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff.
Everybody.
Instead of starting a fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about. And if you looked at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign in the debate, I mean, my schedule has been full bore. I've done. Where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball. I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing.
It's good.
And I have, I don't know how many, don't hold me to it, roughly 20 major events. Some of them with thousands of people showing up. And so I just think it's better. I always have an inclination, whether I was playing sports or doing politics, just to keep going, not stop. I just got to just pace myself a little more. Pace myself. And the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling into 15 time zones a week before.
Right, that's wise.
Anyway, that's what it was about. That's what it was about. And by the way, even with that, I love my staff, but they add things. Add things all the time. At the very end. I'm catching hell from my wife. Yeah. Anyway.
That's funny. That's normal. Like it's a dead room because whatever.
I'm sorry.
Like my wife's bitching because my
Zeke
staff
Miller,
adds
Associated
shit all the
Press.
time. Right.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two questions for you. First, on the NATO summit, President Zelensky, in your meeting with him, he pressed you to lift your limitations on the Ukrainian use of American weapons, saying that in his public remarks afterwards, saying that Ukraine cannot win the war unless those limitations are lifted. Are you reconsidering your position on that? And then secondly, following up on Felicia's question there, leaders of your own party have said that they're not worried about that debate. They're worried about the next bad night and the bad night after that. How can you reassure the American people that you are up to the task and that there won't be more bad nights at a debate stage or somewhere else?
First thing about Zelensky asking for the ability to strike deep into Russia. We've allowed Zelensky to use American weapons in the near term and the near abroad into Russia. Whether or not he should be attacked. For example, should Zelensky, he's not. But if he had the capacity to strike Moscow, strike the Kremlin, would that make sense? It wouldn't. The question is, what's the best use of the weaponry he has, and the weaponry we were getting to him? I've gotten a more long-range capacity, as well as defensive capacity. And so our military is where I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. And we're making a day-to-day basis on what they should and shouldn't go, how far they should go in. That's a logical thing to do. Second question related to
bad nights, sir. How can you reassure the American people that you won't have more bad nights, whether they be on a debate stage or it's a matter of foreign policy?
Well, I tell you what.
Trump's having a bad night.
The best way to assure them is the way I assure myself. And that is, am I getting the job done? Am I getting the job done? Mm-hmm. Can you name me somebody who's gotten more major piece of legislation passed in 3.5 years? I created 2,000 jobs just last week. Mm-hmm. So if I slow down, I can't get the job done. That's a sign that I shouldn't be doing it. But there's no indication of that yet. None. What do we got here? Merrick, Pulaski Radio.
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm well.
That's nice.
The elections in the US have consequences around the world. You have pretty high standing in Europe. I just asked President Macron about you, and he said we are happy to have him as the President of the United States. But there is a concern many people in Poland and across Europe are worried that the former president may win the election. And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine, or push Ukraine to give up territories to Russia.
They're correct.
Yeah.
And yourself was warning just 2 minutes ago about it.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you think that Europe will be left on its own if Donald Trump wins the election? And what's your advice to European leaders to prepare for possible US disengagement?
Well, look, I think, how can I say this without sounding too self-serving? I'm not had any of my European allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win.
Yeah.
You can't let this guy come forward. It'd be a disaster. It'd be a disaster. I mean, I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently, where NATO, I just learned about NATO or something to that effect. Foreign policy has never been his strong point. And he seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian. That worries, as I tell you from Poland, that worries Europe. That worries Poland. And nobody, including the people of Poland, think that if he wins in Ukraine, he's going to stop in Ukraine, that that's going to be the end of it. And so what I can say is, I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job, to make sure that Ukraine does not fall, that Ukraine succeeds, that the European alliance stays strong. You may recall, no one was talking about Finland joining NATO. I remember talking to Putin right after we got elected in Geneva, and he was talking about what we should do. We couldn't be in Eastern Europe, etc. And I said, you're looking for the Finlandization of Ukraine. I said, you're going to get the NATOization of Finland.
No shit.
And about 4 weeks later, I got a call. No, that's not true. Probably 5 months later, from the president of Finland, could he come and see me? In my office, and I invited him to the Oval Office. We sat down and talked. He said he wanted to join NATO. Could I help? And I did. It wasn't automatic. And then I got a call from the Swedes. I beg your pardon? And so Finland
So it's just like random
joined
statement.
NATO. 800-mile border is a significant, and they were already allies, but they weren't part of NATO. And you heard, I think you heard, maybe, I can't recall whether he said it publicly or in our closed meeting, but he wouldn't mind it being repeated. He said, we decided in Finland, the people of Finland decided they had to be part of NATO. It was in our interest because of the joint ability to be together, to dissuade any attack on Finland. And the same thing with Sweden. It took a lot of selling to some folks, particularly in Turkey and other places, to agree to the expansion. But it expanded. And we're a hell of a lot stronger because of it. We're more secure because of it. And by the way, I was able to get 50 other nations, 50, to support Ukraine. 50. And we were able to bring about a coalition of Europe and Asia, Japan and South Korea. I just met we talked about AUKUS, and we talked about the relationship between Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, the United States. We're making the world safer and stronger because we have to deal with the new arrangement that exists in the world. The Cold War is over. The post-war era is over. What is going to replace it? And I respectfully suggest I have a pretty good idea what that should be. I've convinced a lot of people to follow it, and we're just going to get stronger. David Sanger. Where's it?
Hold on, pausing for a second. So far, so good. Chat room, thoughts? Pretty rock solid. Couple of verbal flubs, but nothing meaningful, and certainly no on the level of God bless you, nice shush. So, yeah, you guys good? I'm good. It's good. All right. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Be nice, David.
Mr. President, the NATO declaration that was issued yesterday was very notable because it described China as a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine for its provision of critical goods to the Russians. That's part of a broader partnership that seems to have cemented in place in the past 2 or 3 years. I think one that you were a little bit doubtful of when we asked you about it some time ago. So I'd be interested to know whether you have a strategy now of trying to interrupt the partnership between China and Russia, and whether or not in a second term you would pursue that, if you could describe that strategy to us. And along the way, could you also tell us whether you think, just to follow up on Felicia's question, that if you were in a room with Vladimir Putin again, the way you were 3 years ago, or with President Xi, that a few years from now you will be able to go negotiate with them, handle them one-on-one?
Well, the first part of the question is, we discussed and I raised in the NATO summit, and others raised, the future of China's involvement, what they're going to do. What they're doing with Russia in terms of accommodating, facilitating, they're getting access to additional, they're not supplying weapons themselves, they're supplying mechanisms for them to be able to get weapons. And China's position is basically, and I've spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader has, over 90 hours since being vice president all the way through, for real. And by the way, I handed all my notes. But my point is that she believes that China is a large enough market that they can entice any country, including European countries, to invest there in return for commitments from Europe to do A, B, C, or D, or not to do certain things. What's happened is we had a long discussion about what we have to make clear. China has to understand that if they are supplying Russia with information and capacity, along with working with North Korea and others to help Russia in armament, that they're not going to benefit economically as a consequence of that by getting the kind of investment they're looking for. And so, for example, we're in a situation where we've reestablished direct contact with China after that, remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down, and all of a sudden things came to an end? Well, we set up a new mechanism. There's a direct line between Xi and me, and our military has direct access to one another, and they contact one another when we have problems. The issue is that we have to make sure that Xi understands there's a price to pay for undercutting both the Pacific Basin as well as Europe, and as it relates to Russia and dealing with Ukraine. And so for example, if you want to invest in China, as you know this area really well, if you want to invest in China, you have to have a 51% Chinese owner. You have to make sure that you do by their rules, and you don't have the authority, and that you have to provide all access to all the data and information you have. There was a while there, as you recall, the last administration and other administrations, where the access to that market was enticing enough to get companies to come in because they had access to over 1 billion people in the market, not 1 billion, but a lot of people in the market. And
yeah, by the way, there are not 1 billion people in China, and this is the first time I've heard him anybody in power even accidentally admit that or mention it. I think this might be just something he wants to jab at them, but for the record, that's kind of amazing.
So they were doing it. But that got curtailed when we started saying we're going to play by the same rules. For example, the idea they don't abide by the international rules related to subsidizing products by the government funding. So guess what? They're not going to be able to export their electric vehicles to the United States without a significant tariff. Others are doing the same thing around the world. But it is a concern. It is a concern that you have both China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, countries that are not necessarily coordinated in the past, looking to figure out how they can have impact.
Do you have a strategy to interrupt that impact?
Yes, I do, but I'm not prepared to talk about the detail of it in public.
Yeah, I don't want to tell them how
I'm going to do it. I think you'll see that
smart.
Some of our European friends are going to be curtailing their investment in Russia. In China, as long as China continues to have this indirect help to Russia in terms of being able to help their economy as well as help them in, as a consequence of that, their ability to fight in Ukraine. The other thing that we talked a lot about is that, and I raised it, and I didn't hear any. I can't swear that everyone agreed because not everyone got to talk about it. But we need a new industrial policy in the West. For example, we talked about how both the EU as well as NATO has to be able to begin to build their own munition capacity, has to be able to generate their own capacity to provide for weapons and the ability to, it came as a surprise to some of us how we had fallen behind in the West in terms of the ability to construct new material, new weaponry, new everything from vehicles to weapon systems. And so one of the things that came out of this was we're going to be meeting again with a number of my colleagues, my European colleagues, is what do we do to increase the capacity of the West, particularly in Europe and Japan, to be able to generate the kind of ability to produce their own weapon systems. Not just for themselves, but to be able to generate that. It's the same, it's what Russia's trying to figure out. That they went to China and they didn't get the weapons, but then they went to North Korea. But we're going to be in a position where the West is going to become the industrial base for the ability to have all the defensive weapons that we need. That was a discussion as well.
Mr. President, I'm not sure you answered on whether you would be ready to go deal with Putin and Xi 2 or 3 years from now.
I'm ready to deal with them now and 3 years from now. Look, like I said, I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact with him. I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior. And but there isn't any world leader I'm not prepared to deal with. But I understand the generic point is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin unless Putin's ready to change his behavior. And the idea, look, Putin's got a problem. First of all, in this war that he is supposedly have won, and by the way, I think, don't hold me to the exact number, but I think Russia had 17.3% of Ukraine that they've conquered. Now it's 17.4. I mean, in terms of percentage of territory. They've not been very successful. They've caused horrible damage, loss of life, but they've also lost over 350,000 troops, military, killed or wounded. They have over 1 million people, particularly young people with technical capability, leaving Russia because they see no future there. They've got a problem. But what they do have control of is they are very good at controlling and running the public outcry that relates to how they use mechanisms to communicate with people. They lie like hell to the constituencies. They lie like hell about what's going on. And so the idea that we're going to be able to fundamentally change Russia in the near term is not likely. But one thing for certain, if we allow Russia to succeed in Ukraine, they're not stopping in Ukraine. I recommend, I know you know this because you've written about it, read Putin's speech after they moved in, what it was all about in Kyiv. It wasn't about just, anyway, read what his objective is. And anyway, but so I think that I'm prepared to talk to any leader who wants to talk, including if Putin called me and wanted to talk. Last time I talked to Putin was trying to get him to work on an arms control agreement related to nuclear weapons in space. That didn't go very far. So my point is, I'm prepared to talk to anybody, but I don't see any inclination. There is an inclination on the part of the Chinese to keep in contact with me, because they're not sure where this all goes. And look what's happened in Asia. We have strengthened the Asian Pacific area more than anyone else has. We just put together with, today I brought on, I asked our NATO allies that we bring on the group from the South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Australia. I already mentioned Australia. And I met twice now, I think, with the 14 leaders of the Pacific Island nations. And we've slowed down what's going on there. We've slowed down China's reach. But there's a lot of work to do. This is a moving target, and I don't take it lightly. Assam from NPR.
Thank you, Mr. President. Asma Khalid with NPR. I have two questions. Earlier, you spoke about the ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas. We're now looking at 10 months of war, and I'm curious if there's anything that you feel personally you wish you would have done differently over the course of the war. And then secondly, if I may, I wanted to ask you about your presidential campaign. I remember covering your campaign in 2020, and there was a moment where you referred to yourself as a, quote, bridge candidacy, a transition to a younger generation of leaders. I want to understand what changed.
Two things. Let's go back to when you talked about would I have changed anything that's happening with Israel and the Palestinians and the Palestinian movement. The answer is, as you recall, from the very beginning, I went to Israel, but I also got immediate contact with al-Sisi in Egypt. I met with the King of Jordan. I met with most of the Arab leaders to try to get a consensus going as to what had to be done to deal with getting more aid and food and medicine into the Gaza Strip. And we pushed it really hard. And Israel occasionally was less than cooperative, number one. The Israeli War Cabinet, I've been dealing with Israel since Golda Meir. Some of the reporters around here come me all the time and heard me say this. The first time I met with Golda Meir, I sat across from her at her desk, and her assistant was Rabin sitting next to me. That's how far back I go. I know Israel well, and I support Israel. But this war cabinet is one of the most conservative war cabinets in the history of Israel. And there's no ultimate answer other than a two-state solution here. And so what was able to be done in terms of the plan I put together was it would be a process for a two-state solution. And we get the Arab nations to, particularly from Egypt all the way to Saudi Arabia, to be in a position where they would cooperate in the transition so that they could keep the peace in Gaza without Israeli forces staying in Gaza. The question has been from the beginning, what's the day after in Gaza? And the day after in Gaza has to be, the end of the day after has to be no occupation by Israel on the Gaza Strip as well as the ability for us to get in and out as rapidly as you can, all that's needed there. I've been disappointed that some of the things that I've put forward have not succeeded as well, like the port we attached from Cyprus. I was hopeful that would be more successful. But that's why when I went to Israel immediately after the massacres that occurred at the hands of Hamas, the one thing I said to the Israelis, and I met with the War Cabinet and with Bibi, don't make the same mistake America made after bin Laden. There's no need to occupy anywhere. Go after the people who did the job. You may recall, I still get criticized for it, but I was totally opposed to the occupation and trying to unite Afghanistan. Once we got bin Laden, we should have moved on, because it was not no one's ever going to unite that country. I've been over every inch of that, not every inch, the entirety from the poppy fields all the way to the north. I said, don't make the same mistake we made. Don't think that's what you should be doing, is doubling down. We'll help you find the bad guys, Sinwar and company. And all this criticism about I wouldn't provide when the weapons they needed. I'm not providing them 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot be used in Gaza or any populated area without causing great human tragedy and damage. But remember what happened when you had the attack on Israel with rockets and ballistic missiles. I was able to unite the Arab nations as well as Europe, and nothing happened. Nothing got hurt. It sent an incredible lesson to what was going on from the Middle East. So there's a lot of things that, in retrospect, I wish I had been able to convince the Israelis to do. But the bottom line is we have a chance now. It's time to end this war. It doesn't mean walk away from going after Sinwar and Hamas. And if you notice, you know better than most, there is a growing dissatisfaction on the West Bank from the Palestinians about Hamas. Hamas is not popular now. And so there's a lot of moving parts. I just have to keep moving to make sure that we get as much done as we can toward a ceasefire, and get those. And by the way, look at the numbers in Israel. I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
There you go, a little jab.
Your bridge candidacy in 2020, you referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate for a younger, fresher generation of Democratic leaders, and I wanted to know what changed.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, our foreign policy, and domestic division. And I think, I won't put words in anybody's mouth, most presidential historians give me credit for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that. Get major pieces of legislation passed. What I realized was
your heartbeat gets up because you're like, come on, do well.
Long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom of how to deal with the Congress.
But
to get things done.
Will they remember the words?
We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen. And I want to finish it, to get that finished. If tomorrow, if we had a circumstance where there was a lineup and I hadn't inherited what I did and we just moved things along, anyway, it's going to change.
Last question.
Sure it is.
Haley Bull, Scripps. Or no, Josh Weingrove, I'm sorry, was the next one. I'll do two more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of your colleagues, Democrats on the Hill, are watching tonight as they assess what they want to say about your candidacy.
When precisely should they go fuck
how
themselves?
You're thinking of this right now. It seems like your answer is clear, but they're watching how things go tonight, tomorrow in Michigan, next week in Texas and Nevada. Are you thinking that way about how the next week or two goes would inform your...
Am I using that way, you said?
Are you thinking that way about how the next 2 weeks go? Will that affect your decision, or are you fully determined on running in November as the party's nominee?
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. Let me see them out. For the longest time it was, Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to, anyway. And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I think we've done over 20 major events, from Wisconsin to North Carolina to demonstrate that I'm going out in the areas where we think we can win, where we can persuade people to move our way, or people are already there. And here, look, the other thing is, we have the most extensive campaign organization of anybody's had in a long, long time. We have well over 1,000 volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, making tens of thousands of phone calls. We have headquarters, I forget exactly how many, I don't want to cite a number and then find out I'm off, but we have scores of headquarters in all the toss-up states. We're organized, we're moving, and that's awful hard to replace in the near term. And so, and here's the other thing. I was in the Senate a long time. Very proud of what I've done in the Senate. I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time, and I was chairman or ranking member and chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be going down to the Johnson Library. Anyway, I'm going to be going around making the case of the things that I think we have to finish and how we can't afford to lose what we've done or backslide on civil rights, civil liberties, women's rights. There's that little button we have. Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea we're sitting around, this is where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around, more children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? We got a candidate saying, promise the NRA, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. You got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do still, and I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And by the way, I'll end this. Well, I'm not going to do that. Haley has to come up too. But I remember I made a speech on democracy in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And I'm not being critical, just observing. The bulk of the press said, what the hell is he talking about that for? Democracy. You did. Democracy is not an issue. Democracy is not an issue. Except the polling data showed 60% of the people knew I was right, thought I was right. I'm not asking you a question. You don't have to answer, obviously. But do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025?
Ooh, there he goes.
Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure, we've never been here before. And that's the other reason why you say hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
We've had some discussions over the past few days with your press secretary about the question of health exams, and you said you take a cognitive test every day in this job. Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. But I'm good. I'm tested every single day about my neurological capacity to do decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff and I said, I'm going to go to South Korea, we're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and Korea back together again after essentially having hostilities toward one another since the end of World War II. I'm going to move and see that we can expand it. The only thing age does is help you with it, creates a little bit of wisdom if you pay attention. And so the point I'm making is, I think it's important that if the neurologist tells me he thinks I need another exam, and by the way, I've laid every bit of the record out. I hadn't hidden a thing. You ought to ask Trump for his, okay? I laid it all out. And every single day I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it. But no one's suggesting that to me now. And I'll ask you another question. No matter what I did, no one's going to be satisfied. Did you have 7 docs? Did you have 2? Who'd you have? Did you do this? How many times did you? So I am not opposed if my doctors tell me I should have another neurological exam, I'll do it. But that's where I am. Haley Bull, Scripps.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said you're making decisions on a day-to-day basis when it comes to support for Ukraine. Does that mean you have not closed the door on further considering lifting restrictions for U.S.-made weapons inside Russia? And if I may, your convention is coming up where your delegates are pledged to make you the official nominee. If they have second thoughts, are they free to vote their conscience?
Obviously, they're free to do whatever they want, but I get overwhelming support. Overwhelming support. I won, I forget how many votes I won in the primary. Overwhelming. And so tomorrow, if all of a sudden I show up at the convention, everybody says we want somebody else, that's the democratic process. It's not going to happen.
Even if that means they vote for someone else?
Sure. Look, I'll end this with this. I served in the Senate a long time. I understand the impetus of candidates running for local office and whether they think the topic can help them or not. In my state of Delaware, which was a very, at least it was a red state when I started, in terms of we now talk red and blue. I don't recall most of the Democratic presidents winning my state when I was a candidate. The truth of the matter is I understand the self-interest of every candidate. If they think that, running with Biden at the top is going to hurt them, then they're going to run away. I get it. But so far, go and look at the polling data in their states. Look at the in-depth, and by the way, I think you'd all acknowledge, and you're all experts, I'm not being solicitous about the president, you're experts on this stuff. How accurate does anybody think the polls are these days? I can give you a series of polls where you have likely voters, me versus Trump, where I win all the time. When the unlikely voters vote, he wins sometimes. The bottom line is all the polling data right now, which I think is premature because the campaign really hasn't even started.
Polljacking.
I mean, it hadn't started in earnest yet. Most of the time, it doesn't start till after September, after Labor Day. So, a lot can happen.
The actual minds are changed.
But I think
everybody else is already
I'm the best I believe I'm the best qualified to govern. And I think I'm the best qualified to win. But there are other people who could beat Trump too. But it's awful start from scratch. And, we talk about, money raised. We're not doing bad. We got about $220 million in the bank. We're doing well. So with that, you want to follow up on any of that you just asked me?
Yes.
you earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Mr. President,
Thanks.
This ends tonight's press conference. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, fuck them off. You already answered stuff. Keep walking.
This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, listen to him. It's an excellent point. Well done. Well, there we go, kids. That was it. That's the whole presser. Rock solid. Yeah. And the idea that he called him Vice President Trump I guarantee it will upset Trump more to be called Vice President, because they're talking about who's Trump's vice president's going to be. It's probably why he misspoke in that regard. But yeah, it's just silly. Like, nobody gives a fuck. Again, the reason they'll jump on that is because everything else he said on policy was so cogent and so smart and so considered. So good stuff. Overall, again, one verbal flub, like kind of right out of the gate, so they'll jump on that.
Good evening.
The rest of it, whoops, hold on one second. Anyways, I'm going to let you guys go. We went a little bit long. Tomorrow morning, I have the show will be different tomorrow because I'm on Dino Badala's show and we're taping it when would be my first hour. So I'm going to start later, and Rob Glenn will join us for the second hour, and then I have to fuck off to the airport to go to Tahoe to do a Nerd Halen show, and then catch a red eye that very same night to Boston to do Sexy Liberal on Saturday, and do my radio show, I guess, in the airport. Oh, God, I don't even know. How would we make it happen? Well, just wish me luck. So until that time, bless you. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. Don't forget to hit that like, share, subscribe, etc. And thanks for watching that with me. It's a good time.